Welcome to the Happy Mama Movement podcast. I'm Amy Taylor-Kabbaz, mama, journalist, coach, and founder of Mama Rising. This podcast is a space of community and collaboration. We gather stories of matrescence, motherhood, womanhood, and change told by our Mama Rising coaches and mothers around the globe, in the knowing that through our stories, we can begin to heal and change the way the world sees, values, and supports mothers everywhere. So, welcome to the Happy Mama Movement. Welcome back, everyone. Depending on where you are in the world, there are certain levels of support that you get when you become a mama. Here in Australia, we have mothers groups, usually organised by the local council, the local government, to connect you with women in your community, in your area, who have been pregnant and given birth around the same time you have. It usually runs for maybe 6 weeks, and you get together each week and you learn about your baby, about their feeding and sleeping, maybe what they will have when they finally start solids. There's a lot of baby-focused conversation. I don't know your experience of this postpartum period, but my own personal experience was incredibly isolating. I didn't feel that the women in the group were experiencing a similar type of motherhood experience as me, which is why I really wanted to share with you this story of Courtney Whittle. And I'm going to let Courtney share with you what her experience was and what she is now here to do differently. Whether you're a mama yourself or want to be a part of this matrescence revolution around the world, this interview is so important to hear. Because the thing is, unless we start doing this differently for mamas, whether you're in Australia or Africa, we're not going to change anything. We have to make spaces where women can talk about their personal experience of becoming a mother instead of just focusing on what's happening with their baby. And that's why Courtney's story and what she is now doing brings me to tears. I am so incredibly excited to know that these are the waves that are beginning to be created around the world. Enjoy. Courtney, welcome to the Happy Mama Movement podcast. I am so grateful we got here. This is the living, breathing example of the maternal wall, how long you and I have been trying to talk.
That's it. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, as I like to do, let's start at the beginning, because our own experience of motherhood and matrescence so often leads us to this work that we do. So could you share with everybody what your experience of becoming a mother and finding out what matrescence was all about?
Yeah, so I became a mum for the first time a little over 6 years ago. And as a first-time mum, I absolutely thrived. I really felt like I found my purpose in life. So when my husband and I decided to have another baby at, my eldest was 18 months at the point, it was a no-brainer because I thought I knew what I was doing. I'd already gone through the motherhood initiation and, I knew what I was in for. So when I gave birth to my second son, Parker, it was at the beginning of the COVID-19 lockdowns. So all supports were being stripped away from us. I popped him out in hospital and had to rush back home because I couldn't see my eldest son and, all the things that came along with mothering through the pandemic. Unfortunately, though, by 5 months postpartum, I had developed postpartum depression and anxiety and suicidal ideation. So to me, I was dealing with a lot of shame around not being able to cope as a second-time mum. As I said, first-time mum, felt like I had it down pat. By no means was it easy, but I felt capable. as a second-time mum, trying to juggle it all without any support, I felt like I was doing something wrong. I was failing. I wasn't cut out for this. I was lacking resilience. And this voice in my head just convinced me that my family would be better off without me. And thankfully, though, I do have a very supportive husband that said, I don't know what's going on, but whatever it is, we're going to figure this out together. And the next day I went to go and see my GP, and I started antidepressant medication, which was amazing because it allowed those thoughts in my head to just soften a little bit so I could just find my footing again, because up until that point I was drowning in motherhood. And even though I was blaming myself for developing postpartum depression and anxiety, there was still this little niggle inside of me of, you need to dig. You need to find out why this happened to you. Because on paper, I had everything, perfectly healthy children. I was healthy, a great family, all of the things that, you're supposed to have the perfect life. So why had I gone from thriving to drowning in motherhood? I wanted to know more about my experience, and more so than what was just being given to us on the pamphlet that they give you at the hospital about, the baby blues or postpartum depression. And I wanted to find out more, than what was on the first page of Google. So I went on a bit of a personal development journey myself, and somewhere along the line, I came across this word matrescence and this woman's book by the name of Taylor-Kabbaz. And while I didn't fully relate to her experience of being a working mother, this word matrescence, this light bulb just went off, and I was like, this is it. This is the missing piece. And in that moment, I knew that I had struck gold. So I later on became a Mama Rising student. I think that was in 2021. Mm-hmm. And that was just the beginning of it all. And doing the course absolutely not only has helped me now in my professional life, but it was so healing, because it was the first time I was sitting with a woman, being you, Amy, who was holding space for other women without the judgment of, hey, suck it up, you chose this, or hey, like, get over it. You're lucky that you have healthy children. What are you complaining about? And so I was being given that loving kindness, but also watching the vulnerability of other women speaking up and sharing similar experiences, and seeing myself in another woman's story, and finally not feeling alone. So, yeah, that's basically a little bit of...
Oh, that's so great to hear, because I often do hear, women who obviously hear my story and don't resonate with the overambitious, hard, crazy, successful, focused woman. But there's still something in this idea of matrescence. And so I love that you've said that, because I do believe, and I know you do too, that whatever your experience is coming into this, there's something in this understanding, in this theory of matrescence that we've been gifted, that has this healing capacity. And then when you explained what happened when you came into our group, which was hearing these other stories, no judgment, especially the way that you have identified, you chose this, you're lucky, you have a healthy baby. Why do you feel the way you do?
Yeah.
Can we talk about how invisible that internal struggle is?
Yeah. And that's the thing. After, it's been a few years now, and I've gone on to do, further education, but I obviously reflect back on my experience a lot, and it drives a lot of the work that I'm doing now with supporting mothers. But when someone invalidates your experience, when someone doesn't tell you, it'll give you the language that you were giving us in that program, you suppress those emotions and you push them down because you don't want to be seen as a bad mother. My thoughts of what a woman with postpartum depression looked like, it was not my experience. One of the women in one of my groups yesterday said high functioning postpartum depression. And I said, oh my gosh, that's what I had. I wasn't in bed curled up in a ball crying. Yes, I wanted to be doing that, but I was just in this go, go, go mode. And I would get up and I would do the things. And there was no issue with the attachment with my son. He was the light of my life. He was everything. He was the perfect, most happy little boy. And so there was no attachment issues there. And it was just really, really confusing. So when I didn't have the space to authentically express my experience, I suppressed it.
Yes.
And biological factors aside, what I have discovered and what I have learned, and of course, lack of physical factors aside, is that what comes from a suppression of emotion in a mother, postpartum depression.
Yeah, exactly. And as we talk about in Mama Rising all the time, self-silencing, it is.
Yeah, self-silencing. Yep.
It is documented, it is proven that when a woman feels like she can't express her emotions, she silences herself, and that internal judgment and anger and outrage and depression and anxiety, whatever it looks like, turns on her.
Yep.
And that's what happens.
Yeah.
But thank you again for saying that, because I think, again, there's two categories of motherhood, right? Mm-hmm. We're either the good mother and we've nailed it and it's natural and perfect and beautiful and we're loving every moment, or we're a complete basket case and we can't look after our baby and we can't function and we can't. Neither of those are most people's realities, of course.
Yeah.
There is a spectrum, in a way, of matrescence, and there is a spectrum of how we deal with it. And the more we continue to perpetuate this idea that you're either good or bad, the more women will continue to silence themselves in the middle.
Exactly.
Because, and that's what you're seeing now? Oh,
for sure. There is infinite ways to be an amazing mother. You know, there's not this blueprint you're meant to follow. It's not being the working mum or the stay-at-home mum. It's being a happy mum. It's being a well-connected mum to yourself and honoring your own needs and desires, because you cannot show up for them if you're unable to show up for yourself. And that's what I'm so passionate about now, is really shining a light on those societal narratives that are still being perpetuated and still being handed down to new mothers, rather than allowing space to be like, hey, welcome to motherhood. Here's the support. Let's figure out what this journey looks like for you. No, we're pushing her into a box, whatever that may look like. I mean, that's another conversation that I won't go down that rabbit hole.
You and I are trying to so many conversations.
I know, but trying to push her into a box that we don't fit into boxes. So we need to be changing that conversation and changing the supports in order for mum to thrive.
Exactly, which is where your work is now leading. Yeah. I want to talk about in particular what your phenomenal vision is now, and I genuinely mean this. The work that you are now doing is one of the things that I'm most proud of from Mama Rising, is that I see yourself, and there's a few, I'm proud of all of the women that have done the training, but there's some that are really out there with big voices and saying we need to change this on a policy level. So let's talk about that in a moment. But first, I want to acknowledge I don't love the word journey, but sometimes there's no other word. The journey you've been on to be here today, clear on what you're doing and be activated no matter the walls in front of you. Because so often there's something that's activated in us when we realise that this isn't okay, we want to do it differently, we want to be a part of something bigger. And then we're still in the trenches ourselves. We still are in that experience of trying to figure out how to do this. And so often it's a long and lonely road, I have to be honest and say. And I know that's what you've experienced. So you did Mama Rising in 2021. And this isn't just about Mama Rising. This is an acknowledgement of the self-development journey you went on to understand yourself and what happened.
Yeah.
Since from then till now, can you share with the beautiful mamas listening what has happened?
Yeah. And I just to touch on a little point that you made at the end there, I think for anyone going through Mama Rising or considering Mama Rising, be ready to go on your own self-development journey. It's all well and good for Amy to give you these learnings and these theories and this understanding, but you really have to find a way to make sense within yourself first before you're able to offer that to another mother. So if you find yourself hitting this, there's going to be lots of walls. In this work, there are so many walls. But when you find yourself hitting that first wall, I don't want you to give up. You got to just take the learning and sit with it, soak it in, and figure out how it all works for your own personal journey before you can keep going forward in supporting mums. So as Amy said, completed Mama Rising, went on to do further study. I didn't know what direction I was going. I started things, I stopped things, I started other things, I, deferred, whatever. And over the last couple of years, I managed to find my way to the point I'm at now, which has been starting a not-for-profit organization called the Georges River Motherhood Network. And basically the purpose of this not-for-profit organization that we are working to turn into a charity is to prevent postpartum depression and anxiety, along with social isolation within the communities surrounding the Georges River. So Canterbury, Bankstown, Sutherland Shire and St George area. So that's in Sydney for anyone that's not aware. And basically what I am doing is bringing matrescence education and support to mothers. So for those of you who have gone through a mother's group, you know that a lot of the focus is on bub's development. And sure, you're going to have some connections if you're lucky with other mums, but a lot of the stuff's going to be really surface level. You'll be talking about sleep. You'll be talking about returning to work. You'll be talking about what do we dress baby in now that the temperature's changing. But you're not having those deep conversations that we need to be having about matrescence and the huge shift going on within you and around you as you journey through those early years of becoming a mother, essentially. So what I have developed is called a mother's group done differently. And we focus on mum's development and giving her the space to share without shame and without judgment what her experience is. So the women all come together and a lot of them aren't necessarily sure what they've signed themselves up for, but I share very openly about my experience like I have about postpartum depression, and I assure them that there's nothing that they can say that I haven't experienced myself or heard another mother experience or talk about. And so every week we discuss a new topic pertaining to matrescence, and every woman gets the space to share what her experience is. And the number one thing that I say to them before we start the program is when you are inside this group, no matter what your thoughts, values, beliefs are, if they don't align with another mother, you just keep them to yourself, because inside this group, there's no judgment. The moment you step outside of this group, the rest of the world is going to judge you for every single choice you make as a mother. And I don't want any woman to ever feel that inside of our network. So I'm basically recreating the space that Amy creates inside the Mama Rising program of, just holding that space and guiding and bringing these theories and helping these women develop a language that you learn through the Mama Rising program to put words to their experience. Because I'm not sure if you're still teaching this, Amy, but what was it? Words create worlds. I think it was,
Dr. Orly Athens' words.
Yeah. Yes. And it's true. They do. And it's a game changer. This is not medical advice to anybody, but I didn't go into intense therapy when I was dealing with postpartum depression. I had felt I needed more. I needed to sit alongside somebody. And while I did somewhat find that in the Mama Rising community, and we all sort of supported one another, I didn't want to be sitting in front of a therapist who was up on a pedestal, unable to connect. I needed to know that I wasn't alone in what I was going through, and I'm offering that to mothers. They're giving that. Even today, I just ran a group, and one mum's talking about her fears of returning to work, and another mother saying, yep, I have felt the exact same thing. So it's all well and good for me to sit there and be like, I promise you, you're not alone. But the space that's being provided for these women, they're able to connect with each other on a really authentic level that's not sort of provided in the community-run Mothers Group program.
Oh, for long-time listeners and long-time people in my community, they'll know that I get teary and emotional about this stuff all the time. So it'll be no surprise that I just got emotional again, because if I could have a little moment here, I remember my first mother's group, Courtney.
Yeah.
And they were beautiful women. In fact, we were friends for a long time, but I was the one with the bad baby in brackets in that group. Well, that's how I felt. I couldn't breastfeed like they could. My baby wasn't sleeping like they could. They could all go and have coffee and sit in a cafe, and they all just had this beautiful, I saw in my mind, perfect mother experience. Yeah. And I couldn't even get out of the house. And, you know, everything now I can see has led me to doing this work. So to hear the way that we are trying to, you are trying to, and others are trying to change this experience, where absolutely there's important elements of those mothers group where we learn and understand what our baby needs.
Yeah, very important. Very important
Very
stuff.
important. Yeah. But, oh, gosh, if I think about what it would have been like to have someone in that room facilitate a conversation with these women, because I know now, 16 years later, that all of them were freaking out and struggling and worrying that the other person had a better baby and they were doing a better job. But in my very overwhelmed, sleep-deprived, scared state, I thought I was the only one in that group of 10.
Yeah.
Thought they were doing a bad job.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, what we could do if we created conversations that was different at that point.
Mm-hmm. It would really change the trajectory of I know it would have changed the trajectory of my motherhood journey had I have had the space to sit and speak the way these women are allowed to speak, or the way I even speak now to them. You know, matrescence and struggling to adjust to different phases in motherhood, it doesn't end after your baby's, you know, you've gone back to work and Bubs had their first birthday. You know, it never ends. It never ends. It's ongoing, and you're always shifting and changing alongside, you know, your children. They start school, and a whole new journey of matrescence begins for you as you learn to sort of part a little bit with your child, and you have to rediscover who you are
over and over again.
Yes. What is this new identity of school mum? Like, am I going to be the PNC mum? Who am I going to be?
That's it. Exactly. Yeah. And just acknowledging our beautiful, you know, mentor, my beautiful mentor, Dr. Lee Athen, who was the first to give me those words. Words create worlds, Amy, which is the basis of everything that we do in Mama Rising, which is if a woman doesn't have the word to describe her world, she gets so isolated and thinks she's the only one in that world. Mm-hmm. So can you share with us just like an overview, because I'm sure you could do it for hours and hours, what you've seen happens when they discover there's a word for their world?
So probably about 90% of the mothers that have come through the program have never heard the term matrescence, or they've heard it because they've seen it on my website. Very few of them know what it means. And throughout the program, because it's quite thought-provoking, before I jumped on this call with you, Amy, I was just reading one of the group chats of the mums who just really lean on each other, and they're like, you know what? My husband doesn't feel guilty when he gets to go and do X, Y, Z. So I'm going to really like step into my masculine and, you know, stop trying to control everything and, you know, go and have a weekend away and not feel guilty and do all those things. And all the women are rallying around her like, yes, we can do this. It's going to be uncomfortable, but you deserve this type of thing. So just, I think there's just so much competition, especially online, about what it means to be a good mother. And as I said earlier, there's infinite ways to be a great mother. And I think that we need to stop trying to look at someone who's doing it differently and comparing ourselves, which I know it's human nature, but we need to stop comparing ourselves and coming together and just rallying around each other and supporting each other's choices. Just because she chooses differently to you doesn't mean that you're less than or your choice is wrong. This is just what she values and what's important to her and her family. So really just encouraging the mums to create that journey for themselves without looking around at what everybody else is doing. Just every week seeing them come back and being like, oh, I had this experience. You know, I can't, obviously I'm cautious about sharing too much. I don't want to share too much about what's said inside the groups, but, you know, someone saying, oh, I had this experience, and I was thinking about, you know, I talk about this maternal internal tug of war, I call it, which I think you used to call the inner split, right? So that back and forth between, you know, the wants and needs of you as a mother and the wants and needs of you as a woman, and when those two identities are colliding, type of thing. And so when they're like, oh, I have the language to describe, this week I was really experiencing the maternal internal tug of war, which I was sharing with you earlier before we got on the call. And having that word to describe, or that label to describe the experience, and coming back and giving her that space to really process it, she's no longer suppressing it. So can I obviously guarantee no one that comes through the program is ever going to experience postpartum depression? No, I can't, because it is such a layered and complex issue. But at least these women are being given that space to share authentically what their experience is, while also developing the language to understand it themselves and then go and share it with their partner, which is another really big thing. They're able to have those conversations about what they're experiencing. And so their husband and their partners are able to really understand, oh, okay, well, you're not going crazy. You're going through this, or I love how everyone always pronounces it differently. What is it called? The matrescence? Or they all say matrescence. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
so that's really
different accents now around the world. Really beautiful as well.
Yeah.
I will forever, you know, whenever I'm asked this, and I can hear you feel the same, we don't know the impact of having matrescence awareness for pregnant women, for girls, for families, for everybody. We don't know what impact it would have on the rates of postnatal depression and anxiety and maternal rage and burnout and all of the different things, because we're not doing it enough yet. We don't have the data. But I have been doing this for a while, and I have seen over and over again. What I would say, hand on my heart, is that when she knows what matrescence is and experiences the feeling of depression or anxiety or any of those associated feelings, if she understands matrescence, she will speak up quicker, ask for help faster, and stop thinking it's just her own individual failing and silence herself. And that is a huge change.
And to bundle all of those things that you just said together, it's self-compassion.
Yes.
Which so many women don't know how to offer themselves. They don't feel worthy of it. But when they understand that, hey, you're going through a developmental transition that impacts every area of your life, and instead of trying to go back to who you were, because you can't, sorry to tell you that, you can't go back, you're going to now spend the time discovering.
Yes.
Discovering who you are going to become. So that's going to look like redefining old aspects of yourself, letting go of certain aspects like, I don't know, the width of your hips.
Yes.
And
what the boobs look like.
You know,
the way to how you feel about your own parents, your friends, the community, the environment, all of it.
Everything. It's so, it's big stuff. And I think what happens is, again, with those societal narratives around getting back, bounce back culture, get back in your old jeans, get back to work and become the same wife that you were before or the same employer you were before. We need to stop with the getting back and start supporting her to move forward and helping her find her way in this new phase of her life. That's doesn't all have to be about mother. She can exist outside of her role as mother. Mother is always going to be a big part of our identity. For me, it's my favorite part. It's my most difficult part, but it's my favorite. But now as my kids get older, I'm really trying to figure out, well, who am I as a woman and what do I want? And then trying to juggle those two things alongside each other. But yeah, when you understand that you're going through a shift and a change, just like you're not going to tell your 2-year-old toddler to go back to being a newborn, why are you expecting yourself to go back to being who you were pre-baby, regardless of whether you're a first-time mum or not? It's just ridiculous, really.
It is ridiculous. So I know this is a big emotive question.
Yeah.
So I would love to just hear what you would like to say to our audience and our community around what it's been like to try and get the attention and acknowledgement of government, of funding, of different organisations, because, as you know, one of my biggest passions is, yes, this will start with us talking to each other and changing the world. The problem is usually fixed by the ones that are most affected by it. We see that in history. And also, this can't be just up to us. We need government funding, we need policy changes, we need support in organisations and communities and the world. As you build this beautiful vision of changing the way that we run mothers groups and support new mothers in your community and then hopefully beyond, what has it been like for you personally to be tried and heard?
Hard and scary. First and foremost, I have been, call it a stay-at-home mum, I guess, for the last 6 years. My whole life has been being a mother for the last 6 years. So now I'm finding myself in rooms in these rooms with ministers and the premier and people in business within the community and having to network. And, meanwhile, like, my pants don't even fit because these are from before I had a baby, and I'm like worried about them popping open because of my mum tum. It's just.
Oh, I love your honesty. Thank you.
It's true. But also like trying to get them to take us seriously. I have been surprised at the interest. Elements of what I'm doing has been difficult. Getting to this point has been so difficult. Getting the government funding is going to be tough. I know there's going to be it's going to be a long road, and I'm in it for the long run. But just getting the interest of people within the community talking about this, and even now it's really starting to our network, the Georges River Motherhood Network, is starting to be one of those things that people in the community are saying, hey, make sure you join this mothers group. Just alongside they say, oh, make sure you go to this baby sensory or check out this park. That's starting to happen, which is really nice. But for anyone, again, who is interested in this work and who feels like it is really big and heavy, it is a lot. So be kind and gentle to yourself and understand that if you are passionate about making change, be ready to work for it and be ready to be turned down, to be ignored, to feel like this is just too hard of a ladder to climb. Be ready for that, but then also have your community of your fellow Mama Rising students that you can lead on and who really share that vision, because I have been where you are, where, of just spending money and trying to get the business up and running and really wanting to make a difference, and sleepless nights of thinking, is this even worth it? Does anyone actually want this? And then you get to a point where if you've worked hard enough, your dreams will absolutely come true. And I pinch myself that this is happening, because if only I could go back in time. And for those of you who are doing this, finding your own purpose out of your own pain like I did, if I could just go back to, 26-year-old me, and who was sitting there drowning in toddler tantrums and breast milk, and just wrap an arm around her and say, hey, you're going through matrescence, and that 3-syllable word not only is going to change your life personally, but professionally, and it's going to change the lives of others. So keep working, keep, talking about it. Even if you don't do anything with this business-wise, talk about it, share this word. We need to change the societal narratives so other women aren't struggling the way I did, and maybe you are. So.
Oh, Courtney, it is absolutely phenomenal to see what you've done with this and your determination to keep going through all the incarnations and your vision to make sure that mums get access to this in an equitable way. I think that's the last thing that I really want to highlight, is that if we're going to make true change for mums, we need this to be on so many different levels. And the way that your vision is wanting to create this, where we have all layers of buy-in from government and all of it so that mums have this accessibility, that it's not just a privileged experience, is so freaking awesome and powerful. So perhaps you could finish with that. Just share with us what your big vision for this will be.
The big vision. Well, to quickly talk about what you were just saying there, just about making this accessible. That's, again, if you're trying to start a business with this, look at that. Don't try to just necessarily aim for being, the 6-figure coach or whatever. Look at making this accessible to other people. And I feel like doors will start to open for you there. So I just wanted to say that.
Beautifully said.
So what I do, what my big vision is down the road, I want to have a physical space, big, open, beautiful space that feels really like lovely and nurturing to come to, where we hold our Mothers Group program and our workshops around matrescence. So I'm not just talking about that, what is matrescence, but also how do we look at matrescence and returning to the workforce? How do we look at matrescence and our marriages or partnerships? I would love to have a space where all the mums in the community can come there. It's going to have some good coffee. That's the number one thing, is the mums love the coffee. So that's first on the list. But also having consultation rooms where we have specialized perinatal healthcare. I'm not just talking about your general practitioners, because even down to getting psychological help, it is so important that you find someone that understands perinatal mental health, because it is different, and someone that understands matrescence, because I think that will make a world of difference. But even down to the naturopaths that understand the hormonal shifts that happen. Again, I know Amy talks a lot about the identity aspect of matrescence, and so do I, but what about the physical aspects, and how do we, nurture ourselves in this next stage of life? So that's really what I want to be doing. And the number one thing I would love to see happen is for my program to be free to every single mother. I try to keep the cost as low as possible. I have a sliding scale, so it is accessible to as many people as possible. I think it would really make a world of difference for so many of us, and really see those rates of postpartum depression and anxiety coming down quite a bit. So, yeah.
Thank you for being such a leader in this space. I will pop all the details for how you see what Courtney is doing and follow along and support in any way you can in the show notes. Thank you again, beautiful. It's an honour to share this.
Right back at you. Thank you.
Thank you, beautiful. Thanks, as always, for being a part of our global matrescence community. Please take a moment and make sure you're subscribed to this podcast in your podcast player, so you can always be notified of our next episode. And if you would like to work with a coach on your own experience of matrescence, please go to mamarising.net and explore our directory of phenomenal coaches, workshop leaders, space holders and facilitators around the globe. You can also explore our Global Matrescence Foundation and consider donating so a mama in need can access the support of one of our coaches and still ensure that our coaches receive the income and support they need so they can continue to work in this way. And finally, if you would like to be a coach, a facilitator and a matrescence activist in your own community, jump on our waitlist for our next intake of the Mama Rising Facilitator Training at mamarising.net. Thank you for being here and being part of this movement. Until next week, bye.